Welcome to Al Bernstein Unplugged on Boxing. In a 40-year Hall of Fame career, Al has chronicled some of the greatest moments in boxing history. On this TV show, you will get to hear him expand on these memories and talk about the current news in the sport of boxing. You will also hear Al interview some of the biggest names in the sport. Here's Al Bernstein Unplugged.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. On this episode, we get to visit with the great Andre Ward, who will soon be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And of course, we're going to answer your questions, which you send us at Al Bernstein on Twitter. And to do that, let me bring in my co-host, Mr. Trip Mitchell. Hi, Trip.
Al, Andre Ward coming back, a return guest, which could mean one of two things. Either he has something great to say, or else he owes you money, or vice versa. We don't know what it is.
I wish it was the latter, but I think it's the former. He is such a compelling guest. The only other guest we've had back is Steve Farhood, the great boxing historian and announcer on Showtime. But I wanted to have Andre back on the show because of his impending induction into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and because we're at the beginning of a year and he's going to be announcing so many big boxing matches on ESPN. I wanted to get a head start on having him preview some of that.
And for those viewers watching this show for the first time, one of the two of us is in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and I won't specify who that is.
We're not sure who that is. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get to, first of all, we've got a great question to start off. Donovan Casp asked something that is so, I think, very relevant. What can be done to stop all the confusing nonsense in regards to the secondary world titles? It's maddening. Try and explain this to a new fan of the sport, and they'll instantly pick a different sport to follow.
It's a very good question. You know, so many of you watching on this show are casual boxing fans. You might not follow every nuance of the sport, and I'm sure it's confusing to you, but because number one, we have 4 different organizations in the world of boxing that sanction world champions: the WBO, the IBF, the WBA, and the WBC. And within those organizations, what this person's referring to is they even have different champions. Like they have an interim champion, a super champion, and a regular champion in many cases. And the WBA even has a gold champion or whatever that is. And what that does is it creates confusion. In every other sport, we know who the champion ends up being. And so I think this has been one of the major problems the sport of boxing has had. Now, there's not that much that can be done about it with these organizations. But one thing that can be done is, for instance, on our show, on Showtime Boxing, and many of the other platforms as well, we simply don't refer to titles. Like we had a fight recently. It was an interim lightweight title. And we didn't even refer to it. We didn't mention it. We didn't say that. We simply let people enjoy the match for what it is, and that's my advice to you. Enjoy boxing matches for what they are when they are competitive and good.
Great. Our next question comes from Michael WBA. If network and promotional roadblocks were no issue, who would you like to see Davis fight next?
Yeah, that refers to Gervonta Davis, the lightweight champion. And you know, the lightweight division, we've talked about it here on this show, is so deep and has so many good fighters in it. And at the top, there are some spectacular fighters. Much has been made of the possibility of Ryan Garcia fighting Gervonta Davis. And that's a terrific fight and would be a big fight. But if somebody said you wanted to have one fight, and again, without any issues with promoters or networks or whatever, you could make it happen just by going like that, it would be Gervonta Davis against Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez is, of course, coming off his big win against Vasily Lomachenko. He is a fighter who has power, he has skill, and if he was in a matchup with Gervonta Davis, we just know that big punches would be exchanged, and we would want to see which one of those two men has the power to really do in the other ones. I think the other one, there's no question that it would be a slugfest. And so I think Teofimo Lopez would be the choice I would have to make. Although, whether it's Ryan Garcia or Devin Haney or Lopez or even Vasily Lomachenko, we'd like to see Gervonta Davis in a big lightweight matchup this year, and we're all hoping that that happens. We we'll be talking to a man who was in big fights all the time, and that is Andre Ward, who will soon be in the Boxing Hall of Fame. When we come back, we'll chat with Andre. Welcome back, everyone. Andre Ward will be our guest on this episode, and he is a man who recently received word that he will be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and that is on the first ballot for him, as is well-deserved. And there was a lot of competition for him to get in on the first ballot this go-around. He is a terrific guy and was a fantastic fighter, and we chat with him a little bit about the honor of going into the Hall of Fame. Andre, since I last got a chance to speak to you, and by the way, thanks again for doing the show, I really appreciate it. You have been named to be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, not surprisingly, on the first ballot in which you were eligible. But in going in, you went in a year that the competition to go in was extraordinary, and yet it was still a given that you would go in. I'm imagining that that's as gratifying as it gets.
I mean, look, what can I say? I mean, just the Hall of Fame nod by itself is just, I mean, that's what you dream of. You know, that's what this thing is all about. And it's a lofty dream when you're a kid, but that's what my dad and my godfather Verge, my trainer, that's what we had on the books, like national championship, gold medal, world championship, Hall of Famer. And we check those boxes, and to be able to know that it's official, and I tweeted this out, you feel like, you know, you can finally rest, because the way I was brought up in the game, we didn't really enjoy our victories. You know, we kind of rest on our laurels for a week or so and kind of bask in it, but we always had that mentality, you know, you're only as good as your last fight, put that behind you, we still got work to do. So now that it's officially over, and that has officially happened, and I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer, I can kind of exhale a little bit.
That's it. That's really an interesting way to look at it. That it's not until this moment, even though you're not active as a fighter anymore, this is like the final validation, the final hill to climb, and now you can literally just completely enjoy all your memories.
And to your point, I mean, I'm the baby in the group. Like how am I getting inducted with Floyd Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins and Ann Wolfe and Layla Ali, and like, you know, like how's that happening? Like I was an amateur watching them on paper.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And big fights, and to be going in at the same time. Right. I mean, it's one thing to be inducted, but to be inducted with this class, it blows my mind.
That's really an interesting point. And the reason, of course, you were inducted is because I think, if I've got this correctly, as an amateur and a pro, you were unbeaten over about 4 presidential administrations. I think you crossed about 4. You barely lost as an amateur. You did this for many years, and then you never lost as a pro. So defeat was something that was alien to you. Yeah, that's for sure. Part of that honor, too, of course, as you say, is going in with such an august group. Have you thought about, and you're going to, they hopefully will have, ceremonies in which they're going to combine 2 years. Have you already thought about your speech for that day? A little bit, few thoughts.
Few thoughts, but I don't have, I don't have it right now. I don't have it. It's just so many people to thank and so many things to say, and but you only get one chance to say it.
It's true. Yeah, I remember there when I was inducted, I thought to myself, you want to keep it around 11 minutes because you don't want to go forever. And Steve Farhood made the point to me. He said the problem, because he also, when he did his speech, you do have so many people to thank that your thank yous could take 11 minutes, right? Without even saying anything quantitatively about the experience.
Easy. You don't want to leave anybody out that played a role.
Yeah.
And it's amazing with this kind of journey, because it's so many people that played roles. Some people were there from the beginning, some people came midway through, and some people played an integral part toward the end of their career, but it was meaningful and you needed them. So yeah, that's something I got to work through, but it's a good problem to have.
Boy, is it ever. That's as nice a problem as you could possibly have. And I think a big part of it too is that you, I always say that, you know, you're one of those people that kind of defines a division, even though you're a great light heavyweight. I think people think of you, probably along with my good friend Joe Calzaghe, as, you know, people that kind of made that 168-pound division something really, really special. And you put it on another level, which is an interesting feather to have in your cap that not many fighters do.
I mean, just being involved with a tournament, right? Like not just
Yeah.
any tournament, but a tournament that hadn't really been done before. I mean, you had the 4-man tournament, you know, that Bernard Hopkins and Keith Holmes and William Joppy and Felix Trinidad took part in, but this was a little bit different.
Yeah.
They fought one time. If they won that fight, they moved on to the finale. We had a 2-year affair.
Yeah.
And it was a round robin where you had to lose twice. And this was the best in the division. And here I am, you know, a contender. I'm on the cusp of, you know, sort of a fringe guy who may or may not be ready for a championship. And
Right.
then I'm thrown in the shark infested waters like that. And that was really a moment where either I was going to rise like I did, or that could have been a career ender. And for to be able to get through that, even the injuries and the setbacks and the replacements, you know, certain guys fell out. Jermaine Taylor fell out. Alan Green came in. Andre Durrell fell out. Saki Obika came in. Like, to be able to survive something like that is pretty phenomenal. So I'm thankful for my run at light heavy, but you're right. What made me and what solidified my legacy, I think, was what I did at 168.
Yeah, it was a trial by fire in that Showtime tournament, to be sure. It was a great thing to watch and be a part of. Welcome back, everyone. Well, Andre Ward, after his boxing career ended, and even during the boxing career, he was dabbling in it, has become one of the best broadcasters, color commentators in the sport on ESPN. And we talked to him a little bit about that. You now, of course, are one of the preeminent broadcasters in the sport of boxing, working on ESPN, and have become a really interesting chronicler of the sport. You know, you are taking your role, I think, to another level, and helping to boxing fans to understand the sport and really enjoy it. And you've settled in now to that role. And has anything of that journey surprised you in any way, either in terms of reactions to things you do, or how the process has gone?
I wouldn't say that it's surprising, you know, because I've, you know, and people know this, that, you know, you're one of my mentors, you know, Jim Lampley, Max Kellerman, you know, Joe Tessitore, the list goes on and on. And I've been around the broadcasting game for going on 10 years. I've actually broadcast for close to a decade now.
That's true.
And people don't realize that because, you know, when I was with Showtime and HBO, you know, it's 4 or 5 times a year. Now it's 20, 25 times a year. So They see me more often. But I've been around the game. I've learned from you guys. I've seen reactions to things that I've said, you've said. And so I can't say that I'm surprised by much, but I just always laugh and kind of, you know, just chuckle a little bit when you do say something and you go on Twitter and you go on Instagram, when you go online and you hear people that may or may not have been following the sport for very long. I don't want to just call them casuals, but a lot of times it is casuals. And it's not that they have just an opinion. It's a polarizing opinion.
Right.
How dare you? What are you talking about? What were you looking at? Yeah, this is crazy. And I'm just like, listen, like, I don't have time to explain this to everybody, but I've been doing this for some time now. I'm not always right, but I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Right.
That part is always something that I don't think you understand it, but you're never going to get comfortable with it, because your first mind is like, hold on, man. Like, I'm a lifer in this. Like, wait a second. What are you talking about? But you got to deal with it the right way. You deal with it gracefully, and you keep moving. But what I also like about that is, whether somebody agrees with you or not,
right,
in the conversation,
right,
we have the people talking about a sport we love and a sport we've dedicated our lives to. So it's not always a bad thing.
No, you want people talking. And the thing that has changed it so dramatically is social media. You know, before that, you didn't get the instant reaction. You might occasionally bump into somebody, or somebody may write a story about it, or somebody might, you know, but the social media makes it an instant onslaught. You go back to your hotel room, and if you're if you dare to look at the social Twitter or Facebook or anything, it's like, uh-oh. And the funny thing is, I don't know if this happens to you. Sometimes things that I think were so benign that couldn't possibly engender reaction does.
Exactly. Exactly. And you can, I mean, literally, if you happen to look at your phone during a break or something in between,
Yes.
like, people will text. You know, you may get Twitter alerts, like you're right, it's in real time.
Yeah.
You don't always have to say something polarizing. You just have to say something that somebody doesn't like or doesn't agree with.
That's for sure. You were a big part of boxing returning from the pandemic on the ESPN fights, and we, I always say that ESPN and Bob Arum played a big role in getting the sport back. It was kind of like it was the guinea pig of everything, because they had to figure it out. How do we come back? How do we do it before anybody else did? And you kind of ushered that in as an announcer, and then carried on as boxing continued to find its footing after the pandemic. I personally thought that the sport did a pretty good job, as I think did almost all sports, of coming back from this difficult situation and finding ways to provide that entertainment for fans. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. I don't think, and I got to give, Top Rank and ESPN a lot of credit for that, because they jumped into the fire. And I'm talking about the fire of the pandemic when nobody else wanted to stick their toe in there. And it was very, very difficult. It was a lot of moving pieces. And I mean, I never thought in a million years that I'd be calling live boxing from my home office.
Yeah.
Like, I literally tell my kids, hey, be quiet. Dad's going to be in here for about 3 hours. Right. I get my suit on, put my jeans on, put my Jordans on, and I come in my office, and I'm in here for 3 hours, and they can hear me and see me on the television, and I'm calling live fights. So I never thought that would happen. And I got to tip my hat to the other guys that we work with, and they just did a great job. And, we had some clumsy moments. We had to figure things out. But all in all, to be able to take that leap and give fighters opportunities. And what I was pleased about, Al, was, no, we weren't putting on championship level fights, but we were giving fighters an opportunity to continue to make a living. And some guys, this is their only living and or supplemental, income that they really, really need. But then guys that didn't have a name in the sport, all of a sudden they got some buzz and they got some notoriety. To me, being a guy who came in the front door, so to speak, with a gold medal, notoriety, and kind of, maintained a certain level of status throughout the course of my career, I appreciated that for those guys. It doesn't always have to be a championship fight where this guy's a champion and that guy's a champion. We love those moments, but the pandemic afforded that for those fighters. And then that kind of gave everybody else the opportunity to create their bubbles and put championship boxing back on the map.
The sport of boxing has come back during this pandemic that we've all been suffering through, and for the most part has provided some interesting matches. And in 2021, there are a lot more on the board, and we talked to Andre Ward about that part of the sport of boxing. You have one of the ones that you're going to be calling, which I think is really an interesting one, is Miguel Berchelt, who cannot be in a fight that's anything but exciting, and Oscar Valdez, who cannot be in anything that's not exciting. So it would be shocking if it wasn't exciting. That is like the classic boxing battle, isn't it?
Man, I don't know where to start with that fight. I just know that I'm excited to call it. Our team is already, having meetings and breaking this fight down. It's weeks away. And I know on paper, and I got a lot of respect for both fighters. They've done thus far and where I think they're going to go ultimately in their careers. Their stories are still being written. Legacies are still being built. But on paper, I know that Berchelt is the easy pick for most. Right. And even Berchelt came out recently and said, whoa. You guys aren't giving Valdez enough credit. Right. And I agree. But I understand why, right? Because Valdez hasn't looked great in his last 2 or 3 fights. He had the broken jaw. He had some issues. He got with Eddie Reynoso, Team Alvarez. And he's in this metamorphosis period where he's trying to find himself. Who's the new me, where I'm still a warrior, but I'm not going out there getting my jaw wire shut every other fight. So he's kind of been stuck in that in-between period. Right. And that's what people have been seeing. They haven't really seen him box really great, and then they haven't really seen him fight really great. So people are assuming that he's going to have that same style or that have that same confusion going into the fight with Burchell. And I'm still analyzing this fight, and I don't have a pick, but I'm not quite ready to write off Oscar Valdez. He's a former champion. This guy has a great coach in Eddie Reynoso. He's got a great team. And fighters have a way, Al, as you know, of rising to the occasion, especially when they know that the majority of boxing fans in the world are doubting them. Valdez is a champion level caliber fighter. He's got great teaching. He just has to go out there and execute. Not going to be easy against Burchell, who does a lot wrong defensively, but he's got bricks in his hands. And he throws a lot of punches. And similar to Vasily Lomachenko when he fought Lopez, a fighter can feel those bricks. They know if that punch hits them on the shoulder or grazes them on the top of the head, they don't want to get hit by that punch, so they won't open up. That's what Valdez is going to have to manage and figure out. But right now, this is the 50-50, maybe 60-40 fight, leaning toward Burchell. But this is, you can't lose with this fight.
Andre, you are one of the classiest guys in the sport of boxing. I've said it a million times. I will continue to say it. And you're making your way as one of the best broadcasters. And in 40 years of broadcasting, one of my most joyous things has been getting a chance to announce your fights, watch you develop as a human being and as a fighter, and now watch you become a preeminent broadcaster. So it's been a great journey just watching what you've done.
Man, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your part that you played and still play. And thank you so much, brother. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Thank you, Andre. We'll see you next time.
All right. Have a good one.
Here's where you can check out the complete interview with Andre Ward. So my thanks to Andre Ward for visiting with us this week. My thanks to Trip Mitchell, as always, for his fine job as my co-host. Most of all, my thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next time.